Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Tom Wardle, and I am a Dharma teacher with the Empty Moon Zen Network. I'm very pleased to be speaking to you all this morning. Uh, so, I have found these practice opportunities online to be just an incredible silver lining to all of the turmoil that we deal with across the world today. And last week I was sitting here, actually, looking at the tiles across my Zoom screen. And I had this palpable experience of all of you uh, miraculously arrayed across my sitting room, right here with me. And it was greatly comforting to my heart. And it also reminds me of one of my very favorite texts, which is the Vimalakirti Sutra. And the basics of it is actually exactly that. It's a man entertaining an impossibly large group of people in his room. Um, the Vimalakirti Sutra was written originally in India, probably about 100 of the current era. So that puts it in the neighborhood of half a millennium after the historical Buddha. It came out at a time of enormous activity in the Dharma. This was the period when the Mahayana was really emergent, but it was also a time when it wasn't really a thing yet. It wasn't its own entity. And so traditional monastics lived alongside their Mahayana brothers and sisters. And so that meant for a lot of mixing and interaction and percolating ideas. And it's from this period that the Vimalakirti Sutra emerges. It's a particularly important text to us in Zen, and it is one of the few texts that holds up as co-equal the practice of lay people to that of the monastic community. So, in brief, Vimalakirti was a wealthy man. We would definitely call him privileged in our modern parlance. But he was somewhat of a quixotic character. He lived on a large estate with his family and servants, but his room was sequestered off to the side and somewhat removed. He was known to frequent bars, but he never became drunk. He also frequented brothels, but he was celibate. Um, he was known for humbling Brahmins and elevating untouchables. He was a real punk rock kind of guy. And the story of the sutra plays out because Vimalakirti is sick. And it just so happens that the Buddha and the monastic community with him is not all that far away. And so the action of the text plays out as the Buddha sends a delegation to visit with Vimalakirti, presumably on his deathbed. Um, Funnily enough, no one wants to go because even the most accomplished of the Buddha's disciples are afraid of the reputation of this strange and singular fellow. And that actually brings out one of the other wonderful qualities of this text is it is one of the few that makes use of humor. But that's actually not the part that I want to talk to you about today. In the preamble to the text, the Buddha is sitting around with his disciples, and the action will focus on Shariputra, whom actually you might recall because the Heart Sutra is addressed directly to him. Shariputra is one of the two most prominent disciples of the Buddha, along with his childhood friend, Maudgalyayana. And Shariputra was known for his wisdom and also for his strict adherence to the monastic rule. In fact, his nickname at the time was General of the Dharma. And his wisdom was considered to be just a hair shy of the Buddhas. He's venerated by all Buddhists, but is particularly important in the Theravadan tradition. And in the Mahayana tradition, he often appears as a foil. And that's how we will encounter him in the text today. And there's this beautiful scene in the preamble where the Buddha is sitting around with his disciples, and I sort of imagine Shariputra leaning back, maybe chewing a stem of grass. And he turns to the Buddha and he says, "So, you're a Buddha, right?" "Yes." "And Buddhas get to create their own Buddha realms when they become awakened, right?" "Yes." "And so that would mean that all of this is your Buddha realm." "Yes, Shariputra, it is." "Don't you think you could have done a little better?" And at that, the Buddha does something extraordinary. He reaches down with his toe and touches it to the ground. And all of this rolls up like a carpet, revealing a world resplendent in jewels. Shariputra is blinded by the beauty of it all and is overcome and experiences something truly profound, as does everyone with the Buddha that day. And I find this deeply moving. It's a beautiful idea. But it also aches in my heart because usually I can't see it. I can't see all of those jewels. The Buddha actually calls it a jewel-adorned Buddha land of infinite blessings. And when I look around, I struggle to see a jewel-adorned Buddha land of infinite blessings in this world. Actually, most of the time, my heart breaks with the hurt of this world. Mine, yours, George Floyd's, and far too many others for me to enumerate here. And it makes me want to ask, how could this be it? How could this suffering world be a jewel-adorned Buddha realm of immeasurable blessings? This world doesn't seem fair, and it isn't. I want it to be perfect, and I have a fairly clear idea of what that means. It would be fair and just. It would be a world in which people could be happy. And it certainly wouldn't be quite such a mess as this. That's what I think of when I hear jewel-adorned Buddha realm of immeasurable blessings. I'm sure you have your own list of changes to make. And I'm sure there would be quite a lot of them, as there are for me. But I wonder if I misunderstand something here, fundamentally. Because Buddhism is a renunciate tradition. And so we don't fetishize jewels as wealth. And we try not to cling to what that could bring. So maybe I need to interpret these jewels just a little bit differently. And luckily, the teachings are there to guide me. In Buddhism, jewels come up actually a fair amount. Perhaps most prominently, they show up as the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. These are of central importance in all Buddhist traditions. And in fact, so much so that for most, the definition of becoming a Buddhist is taking refuge in these three jewels. And that gets us to one of the fun parts of being a Buddhist, and that's vocabulary. We get to sort of learn all of this esoteric vocabulary and perhaps occasionally show it off to our friends. So here, Buddha. Buddha literally means the awakened one. And classically, this would refer, of course, to the Buddha Shakyamuni. And perhaps we can expand that a little bit to embrace all teachers of the way. It's also something a little bit more than that. It also suggests the awakened nature, the possibility of being in harmony with all that is. It's important to remember that the historical Buddha awakened in this very world, in a world perhaps not unlike our own, a world of strife and turmoil and hardship. And remembering this potential for awakening in us all is perhaps a seed of hope. The second jewel is Dharma. And Dharma is one of the trickier pieces of Buddhist vocabulary, and it can mean a variety of different things in different contexts. Sometimes it means phenomena, anything, take your pick. It can also mean the truth or the law of the universe. In fact, it can even mean the universe itself in all of its infinite splendor. In this context, the context of the three jewels, it's usually taken to mean primarily the teachings. Of course, originally the teachings of the historical Buddha, but generally anything that points us on the way to awakening. And finally, we have Sangha, which means community. Originally, this actually expressly meant the monastic community. We have loosened that up a bit to embrace the community of all practitioners. And also, perhaps it can mean the community of all beings together. So if this is what we mean by jewels in Buddhism, if that's what we're really talking about, maybe this jewel-adorned Buddha land of infinite blessings doesn't mean some idealized perfect world of wish fulfillment and dreams, but instead suggests a world that is perfect for practice. Buddhism, much like the Rolling Stones, acknowledges that you can't always get what you want. And maybe that isn't such a bad thing, after all. Another Buddhist teaching is the teaching of the six realms, the six births. At the top, we have gods, and at the bottom, we have beings confined in hell, suffering greatly. And right in the middle, we humans. And strangely, the teaching is that it's actually not such a great thing to be born a god, because a god can bring about whatever they wish with a simple thought. And it's far too easy for them to fulfill all of their desires, so they have no reason to come to practice. The teaching in Buddhism is that being born as a human, right in the middle, is just the right balance of power and powerlessness to bring us to practice. And it is practice that brings us to awakening. This model of the six realms or the six births is also a beautiful way of talking about psychology, but that's a topic for another time. We are invited to take refuge in these three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. We're invited to trust in them and to let them guide us. And this way of embracing the world has profound implications. If this world is itself those jewels, if all this messiness, all of this heartbreak is in fact Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And so this jewel-adorned world invites us in. It invites us moment by moment into an intimate engagement. Some might even say a dance. And if everything in it is a jewel, is a treasure, then how should we treat it? For myself, when I engage in the world, I usually try to fix things, or at least make them better as I see it. But when I think about everything I see in this world as a jewel of the Dharma, I don't want to put my hands on it in quite the same way. I don't want to manipulate it. I don't want to try to repair it. And I certainly don't want to try to bend it to my will, make it conform to what I think it should be. Instead, I have a very different reaction. Instead, what I want to do is care for it. And it's challenging. It's really hard. Because I want to pick and choose. There are some things about this world that I like very much, and there are a whole lot that I don't. And so that's the challenge to me in my practice when I remember the Buddha's toe touching the ground and revealing all of the jewels around us all the time. Even my vexations, even my enemy, even me, all a part of it, all shimmering jewels in this jewel-adorned Buddha realm of infinite blessings. Thank you.